Hello, welcome back to the Little Craft House. Today we're continuing on with my Polymer Clay Shape Cutter Hacks series. This is where I take common shape cutters that you probably already own at home and use them to create some fun and unique shapes. With Christmas fast approaching, I thought it would be the perfect time for this tutorial. So today I'm going to show you how to make Christmas earrings that include some trees, some Santas, some snow globes and more. So as many of you would know, that I own a craft store here called the Little Craft House in Perth. This here that you're looking at now is my personal collection of shape cutters. I have so many, but I don't always have the one I want for the job. So that's where I have to get creative, and that is where these cutter hack tutorials came about. Okay, so we'll start off with the tools that you're going to need today. I've got my flexi blade and I've also got a scalpel. Make sure that they're nice and sharp. I've also got this ripple blade that came in my pack when I got my flexi blade. I've also got a ball-tipped texture tool as well as a sharp pointed texture tool. I've got my usual acrylic roller as well. Just pop that to the side there. And the shape cutters that we're going to be using today, I've got a range of circle cutters. So some are the metal, so I've got some plastic, and I've got these little stud cutters here, as well as the 3D printed. I've got a couple of flower cutters as well. And I've also got this cool little half, this red one here, half flower. Yeah, we're going to use that one, as well as an arch one. I'll pop up the top here. And then this green one here, I've been using this heaps recently, this drop. So you guys might not have the same shape, but if you've got something along the similar sort of lines, I'm sure you'll be able to get creative and follow along to still be able to create these shapes too. Right, so my first hack that we're going to be doing today is using the flower shape cutters as well as some circles. And these cutters, believe it or not, are going to create some lovely golden stars. So this is Primo Gold here, which is just a beautiful colour. And I'm just going to cut out my shapes here. So in a minute we're going to be working on Christmas trees, but I thought the first shape we should do today is the star, because when you do Christmas trees, of course you're going to need a star on top. And recently I was looking through all my cutters and I didn't have a star cutter there. I used to have a star cutter, I don't know what I've done with it, so I had to get creative and use the flower cutter for it. So it's really easy to do, but it does take a little bit of practice. So what I'm going to do is with my fingers, I'm just going to gently squeeze each of the petals to create more of a triangular style shape. So these will be the legs and arms of the star. Now, as I've just said, it does take a little bit of practice. Sometimes it's not quite even, so you've got to use, I'm using my thumb and finger from the other hand just to help press and just make it a little bit more even. There we go. How cool is that? And super easy. So it's got a couple of little fingernail indents in here, so I'm just going to give them a little smooth out just to try and fix that a little bit. But I'm pretty happy with how that star is. So I'm just going to do it again now for this little one. So yeah, it works best if you've got a flower cutter that's got 5 petals. You can do it with the 6 petal ones, but yeah, the 5 petals I just like the 5 petals better. And there we go, another little cutie star. So I'm just going to pop that down to the side there. Now, when it comes to the Christmas trees that we are going to do in a minute, I didn't have a flower cutter small enough to be able to make the star. So I had to use some circles. So I'll try and show you with the larger circle how I did this. It again takes a little bit of practice and neatening of it up. But so I'm just going to try and make the beginning parts of those 5 points. So starting at the top, making the side, then coming down to the bottom 2. And then the more I go around, I can keep squeezing it and perfect each of those arms. It's easier to show you on this larger one than it is on the smaller one, but it works really well for the smaller because, as I didn't have a flower cutter small enough to do it with. And so some of the little bits here are a little bit bunched up, so I'm just going to press them down just to even it up. Alright, and there we go. So I actually like the way that these aren't quite perfect as well. Gives them that little bit of a sort of more rustic, natural feel to them rather than them being that perfect cookie cutter shape. Okay, I'm going to do it with the small circle now. It is a little tricky to see because my fingers are quite big compared to the circle. So I'm just trying my hardest to show you. That's why I showed with the bigger one before. But yeah, just going around in the circle. And I actually find the smaller one a little bit easier in the way that you can pop it down. I'll do it in a second once I've got these bits formed. But you can pop it onto the table and then get something like a paintbrush here or a texture tool, something that's got a rounded edge on it. And you can just kind of push in each of those. Zoom in so you can see a bit better. Just push in each of those little dent bits. The gaps rather between each of the arms. And yeah, I just think it works a little bit neater and nicer with the small ones because you can't really do that with the bigger ones. And so now we have our first shape using our cutter hacks, and that is our star. So next we are going to move on to Christmas trees. So as I mentioned previously, this drop cutter is one of my favourites at the moment. You could use a teardrop shape or something that is a similar shape. It's all about just using what you have and getting a little bit creative. So I've got my other tools here as well, and we are ready to get started. So I'm going to use this clay here. I'm pretty sure it is maybe wasabi, primo wasabi. It's a nice bright green, and I'm wanting these trees to be a little bit funky, a little bit bright. So rather than the traditional green colour, we're going to use this brighter one. And so I'm just going to get it nice and conditioned and nice and soft and ready to use. So I'm just going to use my acrylic roller, and I might just pass it through the pasta machine a couple of times in just a second. We want to aim for our clay to be around the 3mm thickness. That's a good thickness for earrings without them being too heavy or too thin that they become fragile and easily break. Right, so I'm going to use my droplet cutter today. Now, as I mentioned before, if you don't have a drop, you could easily use something else. Other ones I had in my collection that are similar are these kite shapes, both the round one and pointy one, and also this more eggy oval shape, I suppose it is. Any of those would work well for this shape as well. So get that bit of dirt off there. And I don't actually want the bottom, how it droops down like that. I don't want it to do that. So I'm just going to kind of chop off that bottom bit there, and I'm just going to cut out my pieces. So I'm just really wanting that top part, that pointed part. So it works well chopping the bottom off, because I probably didn't have enough clay here to do 2 full shapes. All right, move that bit to the side. And then just to make them nice and even, pop them next to each other there. I'm just going to use my flexi blade to bend it and cut a nice rounded bottom off. So not on the angle like it was, but this is now going to be more of an even bottom, a bit smoother. So to make it the same on both, I'm just going to put my piece on top. If you find it gets a bit sticky, you could always put a little bit of corn flour between. I don't like to use corn flour, but you could, if you use it with your cutters anyway, you could always pop it between to help you stop them from sticking. And just, yeah, layering it on top like that just means that they are now going to be identical where the cut is on the bottom. So there we go. I've got my pair of my Christmas trees. Now, even though it's just a cutter hacks tutorial, I am going to still make these into earrings. So I'm going to get this nice bright fuchsia pink, and I'm just going to roll it out to pop some decoration on. So by rolling a snake out, I'm then just going to cut my little pieces, roll them up and pop them on as little dots. Now, I always get asked the question about clay adhering, clay bonding. People always ask me, what do I put on to make them bond together? Well, the answer is nothing. So raw clay will stick to raw clay without you needing to add any sort of bonding agent. So you don't need Bacon Bond, you don't need liquid Sculpey or liquid clay or any of that sort of thing. The raw to raw will stick. So firstly, I just like to put them on nice and gently so I can move them around still. But once I'm happy with their positions, I'm going to push them down so that they are already sort of pre-bonded together, giving more surface area touching, and then they will be fine and they won't come off once they have been baked in the oven. Now, in saying that, if you did want to put something on just for that additional hold, or if you wanted to keep them round like this so they don't have a lot of surface area touching either the ball or the tree, then you may want to use something. But as I'm going to squish mine on, push it on, it's not going to need anything at all. And one other thing to remember when decorating your Christmas trees is to remember where your holes are going to be cut afterwards to hang them. So I'm going to put little stars on the top, so I need to make sure that I'm not putting any of this decoration up towards the top where the hole is going to be drilled. If you want, you might like to mark out those spots so that it reminds you and gives you a guide for when you are drilling. But I like to just eyeball that, so I don't need to put a mark there, but I do just need to make sure that I'm keeping the space clear so that I'm not going to have to drill through one of those pieces. And so I've just grabbed a little bit of brown, I'm pretty sure this is cowboy, souffle cowboy, and I'm going to make a little tree trunk. Now, I did forget about the tree trunk when I just put those dots in, and I've literally just said that I don't want to drill through a dot. Looks like I might have to with this one. I have pressed it down though, so it's not too risen. But yeah, some little tree trunks just at the bottom there, and they're going to dangle nicely once I put the jump ring in. I also need to do the stars as well. So just exactly how we just did the stars a minute ago is how I'm going to do them now. So I didn't have that flower cutter, or the flower cutter that I have, the smallest one is too big for the stars for this. So I found that this round stud cutter here was the perfect size. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to speed up the footage here, because if you want to go back and see me do it, then just go back to the last bit. Alternatively, you can fast forward, speed through this bit. You don't have to watch me do it again, and skip ahead to the next section. And so there we go, that is our first of our funky Christmas trees using our drop shape cutter. Okay, so next up we're going to do a Christmas tree again, but this time we're going to use some circle shape cutters. So I've got 3 different sizes here. The large and the small, not a huge difference, but yeah, 3 different sizes, and I'm going to use 3 different coloured clays. So just cutting a circle out of each one of these. And this little one here, it's always tricky. It always likes to get stuck in, so I just kind of push it up a little bit, which helps me to grab it to pull it back down. All right, move those bits to the side. So with each of my circles, I'm now going to get my blade, and I'm just going to cut each one in half. An alternative to using the circles is that you could use triangles. I've done triangles before and they look pretty cute too, but I just thought I'd be a little bit different from the traditional triangular one and go with the semicircles. So I've got the little one there as well. And this one's just pretty plain, but you could always decorate it, put texture on it, anything like that to make it a little bit more funky as well. You could even turn them up the other way, so they're facing up this way. That just is a little bit different as well. Not quite so traditional, but still kind of being, especially being the green, gives that tree effect. But I like to go arches down like this. And so I'm going to add a little trunk, tree trunk as well, which will dangle nicely once it's all jump ringed together. And of course we need a little star to go on top too. So just the same as the other stars that we've done, made these ones with the circle, and so they'll just sit on top like so. So next up isn't really a cutter hack, but if you do have Christmas tree shape cutters like these ones here, I just thought I'd show you a way that you could use them a little bit differently so that it's not quite the same as just using it for its intended purpose. So I'm just going to cut a tree out here. Pull that bit off. And then I've just got myself my ripple blade. So generally in blade packs, you get a ripple blade. There's not a lot of uses for them, so I like to try and find different uses, different things to actually use them for, because otherwise it just sits in my jar on the side and it doesn't get used. So what I'm going to do is line up each of these, each of the sections of the Christmas tree. So we're going to divide it into 3 pieces. And so once I've baked and cured this tree, I'd be able to drill holes into each of those sections and hang them so that it all kind of jiggles and wiggles around, hangs really nicely and moves as you wear the piece. So yeah, that's a cute little idea. You could always use a different colour as well and replace say the middle section or each section with a different colour. Okay, so moving on from trees now, I've got some shape cutters here that I'm going to experiment with to make a Christmas hat or Christmas beanie. So one of these I've done before, but the other ones I thought I'd just see if I can do some different shapes. You guys might like something better than I do. One might work better than my usual one. So we'll just have a play around and see how it works. Just going to start with a circle shape cutter. Cut out a circle, and I'm just doing red because it's just a Christmassy colour, but you could always silk screen or use different colours or draw patterns on with Poscas or any of that sort of thing. So just going for a bit of a prototype here, because as I say, I've done one of these designs before, but not both of them. Actually, I'm going to do 3. I've got 3 different ideas that we can work on. So I've done the arch before, but not the 2 circle ideas. So we'll see how we go. I'm just going to cut a strip of white here. Just neaten off my edges. That's a little bit cracked as it's the rough edge. And I'm just going to cut a strip here. It's going to be like my fluff on the hat or the bottom rim of the beanie. And of course, every Christmas hat needs a pom-pom, so I'm just going to use the smaller section of this circle cutter just to cut out a couple of circles, and they're going to be the pom-poms for the top. Okay, so I'm just going to squish one of those pom-poms onto the top of this arch to make the top little pom-pom there. I've pushed it pretty well together, but it may need a little bit of glue afterwards, depending on how I decide to hang these. And I'm just going to do the strip here along the bottom, like this. It cuts nicely. So when I've done this before, I did do the pom-pom a little bit differently. So I think, yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to need to overlap a little bit, but I'm just going to try it like that for now. Next up, I'm going to do one of these circle ones. And I'm just going to pop the strip along like so. I'm just going to bring my circle cutter back because that's just going to make those edges match up nicely rather than cutting it flat and straight with the knife. This way it's kept that nice roundness, kept the original shape of the circle. I'll just neaten it up a little bit though. And I'm just going to cut across the bottom just to make it flat. And then pop the little pom-pom on top. It kind of reminds me of the South Park character's hat, that one, being quite a round little beanie. That's all right. And then for the last one here, I'm just going to trim it at the bottom to start with. Just smooth that bit off, it was a little bit rough. And pop my little pom-pom on. Yep, I think I will overlap that one there, just because it's going to have a better hold, I think. And I'm just going to maybe pop that underneath and see how that goes. A bit more of a, I suppose a bit more of like a bowler hat style. It might look, that one might actually look better if it was done in black so that it's kind of like a snowman hat. But yeah, I don't think I like it like that actually, but I'm trying to trim it down a little bit. I think, no, that's too skinny. I think just the outline of the shape is what I wanted, but maybe it's just the wrong colour to do it in. But anyway, that's just an example, just a prototype. Probably won't do that one again. I might bake it up anyway just so I can have it to the side. All right, I've changed that back to having a wider base at the bottom. Still don't really like it, but we're just gonna, yeah, it's just gonna be one of my examples. Okay, so I've got my ball tipped tool here and I'm just going to use the really fine end just to give some texture to these bits of the beanie. Make it a bit more like a fluff on a Santa's hat, I suppose. Yeah, just dotting it all around, making it a bit rough. I like to go along the edges because it kind of squishes it onto the base clay and it kind of gives it that fluffy effect. So there we go, that's the examples of the hat. As you can see, that arch one is my favourite, so I've made 2 of those so I can make a pair of earrings. Okay, next shape, I'm just using my circle cutter here and I've got some beautiful sparkly blue clay. I've got some white clay. This one's got a little bit of glitter in it. I don't know if you can see that, probably not. It's not really showing up properly. And I've also got some gold. So I'm just going to cut a circle out. Oh, I didn't tell you what we're making. We're going to make a snow globe. So this one here is, I'm really excited about. I haven't done this one before, but I thought I would experiment. I've got the idea in my head, so hopefully it turns out the way that I'm thinking and planning. So smoothing out the edges again, just around the edge like that. And I'm going to use some gold now. This is just going to be for my stand of the snow globe. I think like with this one here, you could use any coloured clays that you wanted if you've got different ideas. I'm thinking I'm going to do a bit of a snowy mountains sort of scene within my snow globe, but you could do, last year I did a snowman. I silk screened first and then I did a snowman on top of it, which looked really awesome. If you scroll back through my Instagram feed, way back to last Christmas, you'll see that example there. But yes, I thought I'd show something a bit different today. This isn't using the silk screen. This is just going to be all freehand cutting. Something that I'm not overly good at, but I'm going to give it a go because I've got this plan, see, and I'm going to share it with you guys. So I'm going to pop that on there and I am going to push it together. Again, hoping that it's going to bond enough. Once it's baked, I might try and see if I can separate it and see how strong it is. If it needs a bit of if it needs a bit of glue, I'll just kind of pull it apart, glue it back together. But I'm hoping that it should bond all right, being raw clay to raw clay. So if I just push it down a little bit there, it just kind of smudges it together a bit more as well. Okay, so I'm going to start cutting up some trees. So my clay is rolled kind of thinner than what my base clay is there, just because I'm going to be layering these, so I don't want to have my pieces be too thick and heavy. I'm just going to freehand cut these triangles, and I'm just going to do a few different sizings, and I'll probably try and do a mirror image on each of the pieces as well. This green that I'm using here is actually just a scrap piece of clay as well, which is great when you only need those tiny bits. It's a really good way to use up the scrap colours. I didn't mention before the blue. I'm pretty sure that was a custom mix that I did as well, mixing some navy with, I think it was white gold glitter, both Primo brand. I know that Sculpey do I think it's called Night Sky. That is also a really beautiful silvery glittery blue. But yeah, I haven't had that for a while, so I'm pretty sure this one was just a bit of a custom mix-up that I did. Okay, so to make my little snowy mountain bit, I'm going to use the circle shape cutter again, and I'm going to do it on the rough edge of the clay here. So that's going to be quite not perfect, which is exactly what I want. So it's nice and rough. And again, this piece of clay was just rolled out quite thin, and I'm just going to layer it over the top here. It's going to catch the bottom of each one of those triangular trees. I'm just going to push it down so that those trees are now cuddled in underneath. I'm just going to tear this out one a little bit actually, because it was a little bit high, and just pop that down. Perfect. I'm so happy with that. That looks awesome. And so now I've got my snow and I've got my trees. Yeah, that's looking good. What I'm going to do is bake these, and then I'm going to add a bit more detail to them once they are baked up and they're cured. Right, so I have baked them up, and I've sanded and assembled them, but I've also added a bit of detail. So what I did was I got my Posca markers, and I used them to add on the little dots of snow. I put the snow capped bits on the tops of the trees, and I added a little gold moon. So if you're using Posca paint markers, you do need to rebake your pieces just to set the Posca pen, just to set that, and then I've also used some matte varnish over the top, and that's just to hold it on and make sure that it doesn't smudge or wipe off over time. So yeah, I've sanded them all up now. The gold pieces on the bottom there, they are nice and secure. I didn't need to add extra glue onto them. I just, they held well enough just being raw clay to raw clay. So yes, now that's my finished pair of earrings. I should also add that if you guys want to know more about using the Posca paint markers on your clay, I have done a video previously, a tutorial previously here on YouTube about using them. So I'll link to that in the description box, and yeah, you can find out step by step how to use them on your polymer clay. Right, so next up we're going to create some puddings. So I've got my circle shape cutter and I've got my ripple blade. And I've also got some brown clay here. This one's got a bit of a metallic-y look through it. Again, I think it's scrap clay, so it was possibly like a burnt umber with a bit of copper or gold or something like that through it, just for that little bit of shimmer. Now, these puddings are super simple, by the way, so all we're going to be needing to do is cut out a couple of circles here. I'll just get them off the tile, whoopsies. And just smoothing out the edges. I always like to just smooth around the edges once I've cut them out, and clean off my tiles so those bits don't transfer onto my other colours. Right, the top piece, so the icing part, I'm going to use my circle cutter again, just cutting it. It's about halfway. This is just going to sit on the top of the pudding, but yeah, about a half circle there. Just move these bits out the way, and then just get the ripple blade, and that's just going to chop along the bottom. I'm doing them together so that they're about equal in sizing. And this is a good ripple blade because the curves in it are actually quite wide, so it's quite a good one. Some ripple blades are a little bit smaller. If that's what you've got, that's fine, that works too. Or if you didn't have a ripple blade, you can of course do it by hand, or you might have another shape cutter that has that sort of a look to it. So I'm just popping it down on the top here and smoothing out around the edges. Doing the second one. Okay, and I'm just going to get a little bit of green clay here. That's going to go on the tops of the puddings because they're looking a little bit bare at the moment. So I'm just going to try and make about 4 little balls about the same size. They don't have to be exact, but I'm just going to roll these. Start them as a bit of a circle and try and make them just that little bit long, like a little bit of an oval shape, I guess, to give it that leafy look. That one's a little bit big, so I'll just make it a bit smaller. Right, so nice and close for this one. I'm going to use my little pointy tool here. These come in super handy if you've got something with a point. If you don't have a metal one, you can just use like a wooden skewer. They work as well. So I'm just pressing down the little bit in the center and just making it have that little leaf shape. And then I'm just going to use my scalpel to help me move it so that I don't squish it with my fingers, because I'm really good at squishing things. So it's going to move these up onto the top. And now I am going to hang these. I have to think about where I'm going to hang them with the hook once they are finished, and I've decided that I'm going to hang them just a little bit off center, so they're going to hang on an angle. If you want them to hang straight, just be aware where you're putting this decoration, because you do still have to drill that hole. So if I wanted them to hang straight, I would have to put these decorations just slightly to the side, or down a little bit lower. So I'm just going to cut some little red cherries here as well. So I just made a bit of a snake with the polymer clay, and then I'm just chopping up into some little circles, and I'm just going to pop them on the underneath. They might be a little bit small. I think I'll just take these ones off. I might make it just that little bit bigger. Yeah, they're just a little bit on the small side. That's not much bigger either, but that's okay. Let's just give that a go. Okay, so I'll just give it a gentle little push down just to secure them onto the top there. And there I have my little pudding. So I'll just do the other one up so that I have a pair. And I'm just actually, what I'm just going to do is pop this little mark here because that's where I've decided I'm going to put my drill hole. There we go, there's the pair, and it's got the drill hole there to remind me that I'm going slightly to the side. Okay, so last up today, we are going to create some Santa Claus earrings. So I've got my circle cutter. I have also got a couple of flower cutters, a half flower and a full flower. Pop them to the side. And I also have a couple of longer shapes. So the drop shape, and I've also got a rounded kite. Now, again, if you don't have these shapes, just have a look in your stash, see if you've got something similar. So we're going to do two different Santas. I'm going to start by cutting out a couple of these drops. And also cutting out a couple of these rounded kite shapes. Pop them out there. Right, get rid of the scrap there. We can use that again in a second. And as always, just give a quick wipe down on the tile. And I'm going to bring the white over now to cut out those beards. So I'm just going to take it down a little bit thinner than what it already is. Again, when we layer, we don't want them to be too thick because we don't want big, thick, chunky earrings. So I'm just bringing it down a little bit thinner, but also just bonding it to the tile as well. So that way those cutout pieces stick to the tile rather than sticking in the cutter. All right, so this is for the first Santa Claus. It's really, really simple, just adding this half flower shape to the kite shape. It's just straight away there, you can see that it's already formed a hat and a beard. This Santa's a little bit of a gnomey sort of Santa. And I can just see that that little tip of red is hanging out the bottom there. So I'm just going to give it a quick little chop just on the bottom, just so that it doesn't hang out that bottom bit where the white is. Just a little bit across the bottom there. And it won't look too untidy from the back either because it's still quite a neat shape. So I'll pop that back on top like so. I really just love this little Santa Claus design. It's just really simple and still really, really cute. And of course the finishing touch, he just needs a nose. So I'm going to get some of this beigey brown clay and I'm just going to roll it into a nice little oval shape and just like so. Actually, I better do both at the same time just to make sure that they are even or even-ish. Like that. I'm going to pop it in that little circular hole there, just like that, and give it a little press down so that he's got a nice big nose. There we go. Super cute. Right, and the second Santa, so I'm just going to cut out a face for this one. He's going to have a face, unlike our gnomey one. So I've got these for their heads. And again, just rolling up a bit of clay for his nose. Probably could do the nose afterwards, but just because it's with the same colour clay, just do that now, pop them to the side. And then get his hat here. And I'm just going to grab that circle cutter back and cut the bottoms of these off to make the rounded top of his hat. Lay these down so we can see. All right, and pop the hats on the top here. Now, I probably could have gone a little bit wider of a top shape or a little bit smaller of the face, but that's okay. We can work with that. And I'm just going to fold the tops over on this. So I like that it was a long shape to start with because it gives me the ability to fold that over. And I could possibly come down a little bit more actually on that, but I might just leave it like that for now and change it afterwards if I feel like it. And I'll bring the white back over. And so with the white, again, I'm going to create the beard. So this time I'm going to use my full flower cutter, because if you didn't have the half flower, you can just use the full. I'm just going to cut off, well, not cut a full flower, I'm just going to sort of do about 3/4 worth, I think, like that. They're not quite even, so I think I just need to trim that down. Actually, I'll use the circle cutter to trim it down. There we go. That's more beard-like. Okay, I'm going to add that to the underneath here. It looks like Santa already. It's just that beard that does it, isn't it? Once you got the beard, you can tell it's Santa. Just even that up a little bit there. Okay, I'm just working on those noses again. So they're a bit circular, so I'm just going to make them a little bit more of an oval shape and just pop it on there. There we go, like so. And then I'm going to do some eyes. Now, I'm not very good at faces, so I'm just going to go with the really simple little, I think you call them sleepy eyes, just the little U-shapey sort of look, just because, yeah, I'm not very good at eyes. My daughter is actually very good at doing the cartoony look eyes. I'm not though, so we're just going to go really simple. So just rolling out a strand of the darker clay here. I'll just chop it at the ends to make it more even. And I'll just kind of bend it a little bit with my fingers like that as I move it on. It's a little bit fiddly. You could, I suppose, use Posca pens like I did with the decoration on the snow globes. If you didn't want to add the clay like this, you could definitely use Posca to add those details. And lastly, I'm just going to add the last little bit of detail here. Just going to put some, I suppose, fluff on his hat and a little pom-pom like so. If you wanted to add that onto the little gnomey one, he could have a little pom-pom on the top of his hat too. Okay, so I've decided that I'm going to change this Santa here a little bit, and I'm going to just fold his hat down a little bit lower. There we go, like so. Looks much better now. Right, so that is our 2 Santa Claus earrings using some shape cutters that I already had in my stash. So all my pieces have now been baked and sanded and assembled into earrings. And yeah, they're a great little collection that I've made now using those shape cutters that I already had in my stash. So no need to go out and buy new ones. So hopefully this has inspired you guys to get creative with the shape cutters that you already own and create some new shapes. So I'd just like to say a massive thank you for joining me today, and hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. And if you have, please, I'd really appreciate a like and subscribe. And also if you can head over and check me out on Instagram, because I'm also putting up lots of tutorials over there as well. So thanks again, guys, and I will see you again next time. Bye.